TV soap news and spoilers say that the sun dipped below the horizon on September 25, 2025, casting Fairmont Crest into a twilight that seemed to pulse with secrets. The small town, nestled in a valley where whispers carried further than the wind, was no stranger to drama. But as the clock ticked toward midnight, the air grew heavy with an unspoken tension, as if the very earth knew something was about to unravel. Beyond the gates of this seemingly idyllic community, lives were about to collide in ways no one could have foreseen. The events of September 26 would leave scars that lingered long after the dawn. Joey's ominous warning. Joey Caldwell stood at the edge of Fairmont Crest's town square, his silhouette stark against the flickering streetlights. His face, weathered by years of hard choices, was set in a grim line. Known for his cryptic pronouncements, Joey had a reputation for seeing things others missed, patterns in the chaos, truths buried beneath polite smiles. Tonight, his voice carried a weight that made passers-by pause, their breath catching as he spoke to no one in particular, yet everyone within earshot. "Mark my words," he said, his voice low but resonant, "something's coming. It's been brewing for years, and tomorrow it'll break loose. You'd better brace yourselves." His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the crowd that had begun to gather. Whispers rippled through the onlookers. Was this another of Joey's rants, or was there something more? History had taught Fairmont Crest to heed Joey's warnings. The last time he'd spoken like this, a scandal had torn through the town, exposing secrets that had cost reputations and broken families. And at the heart of that storm had been Doug Harrow. Doug. The name alone was enough to stir unease. A man of contradictions, Doug had been both beloved and reviled, a charismatic figure whose charm masked a darker edge. His disappearance 2 years ago had left a void in Fairmont Crest, one filled with rumors and unanswered questions. Was Joey's warning tied to him? The townsfolk exchanged glances, their minds racing with possibilities. Had Doug returned? Or was something even more sinister at play? Vanessa's descent into despair. Across town, Vanessa Reed sat alone in her dimly lit apartment, the weight of the world pressing down on her. The room was a mess, empty coffee cups scattered across the table, a half-packed suitcase spilling clothes onto the floor. Her recent trip with Joey had been a disaster, a whirlwind of arguments and unspoken resentments that had left her emotionally raw. She'd hoped the getaway would mend the cracks in their friendship, but instead, it had widened them. Now, back in Fairmont Crest, she was trying to piece herself together, to find some semblance of peace. The silence of the night was shattered by the shrill ring of her phone. Vanessa froze, her heart pounding. It was late, too late for casual calls. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the receiver, a sense of dread coiling in her stomach. When she finally answered, the voice on the other end was one she hadn't heard in years, and it carried news that sent her world spinning. "Vanessa," the voice said, trembling with urgency, "it's about Fairmont Crest. It's happening again." The words were like a knife, slicing through the fragile calm she'd been clinging to. Memories of that night, the tragedy that had shattered her life years ago, flooded back. The fire at Fairmont Crest's old mill, the screams, the chaos. She'd lost everything that night, her brother, her sense of safety, her trust in the world. The official report had called it an accident, but Vanessa had always known there was more to it. And now, this call confirmed her worst fears. The past wasn't buried, it was clawing its way back to the surface. Overwhelmed, Vanessa turned to the one person she could always rely on, Nicole Vance. Nicole, with her warm smile and unwavering loyalty, had been Vanessa's anchor through every storm. But when Vanessa arrived at Nicole's doorstep, tears streaming down her face, she found her friend pale and shaken. Nicole's eyes were red, her hands trembling as she delivered the news that would break Vanessa's heart all over again. "It's Doug," Nicole whispered, her voice barely audible. "He's alive, Vanessa. And he's back." The revelation hit Vanessa like a tidal wave. Doug Harrow, the man whose disappearance had haunted her dreams, was alive. But the joy of that truth was tainted by Nicole's next words: "He's not the same. Something's wrong with him. I saw him last night, and Vanessa, he's dangerous." Jan and Mona's suspicious discovery. Meanwhile, in a quaint cafe on the edge of town, Janine, Jan, Harper and Mona Ellis sat hunched over a table, their heads bent close together. The two women, lifelong friends with a knack for sniffing out trouble, were poring over a stack of documents they'd stumbled upon in an old storage unit. The papers belonged to their former friend, Leslie Kane, and what they revealed was nothing short of shocking. Leslie had always been a figure of fascination in Fairmont Crest, beautiful, ambitious, and utterly ruthless. But these documents painted a picture of wealth that defied explanation. Bank statements showed deposits in the millions, transactions tied to offshore accounts, and cryptic notes hinting at deals made in the shadows. Jan's brow furrowed as she traced a finger over a particularly damning entry: a transfer of funds dated the day after Doug's disappearance. "This doesn't add up," Jan muttered, her voice tinged with suspicion. "Leslie's been playing us all for fools. Where's this money coming from?" Mona, ever the skeptic, leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing. "You know what they say about Leslie," she said. "No conscience, no limits. If she's mixed up in something shady, it wouldn't be the first time. But this feels bigger." The two women exchanged a look, their minds racing with the possibilities. Leslie's sudden wealth, Doug's mysterious return, Joey's ominous warning. It was all connected, they were sure of it. But how? And why now? Jan and Mona were no strangers to gossip, but this wasn't just idle chatter. This was a scandal that could bring Fairmont Crest to its knees. Leslie's unapologetic triumph. Leslie Kane, the woman at the center of Jan and Mona's suspicions, stood on the balcony of her sprawling mansion, a glass of champagne in her hand. The lights of Fairmont Crest twinkled below, a stark contrast to the darkness that seemed to follow her everywhere. She was richer than ever, her empire built on secrets and sacrifices she'd never admit to. Remorseless, unapologetic, and thriving, Leslie was the embodiment of success, at least on the surface. But even as she sipped her champagne, a shadow of unease flickered across her face. She'd heard the whispers about Doug's return, and while she'd never admit it, the news had shaken her. Doug knew things she'd buried deep, things that could unravel everything she'd built. Leslie had always been a master at staying one step ahead, but this time, the stakes were higher. If Doug was back, and if he was talking, her carefully constructed world could come crashing down. Shanice's secret and Derek's miracle. In another corner of Fairmont Crest, Shanice Brooks sat in her small, cluttered apartment, her mind a whirlwind of indecision. Shanice was known for her sharp tongue and fearless honesty, but tonight, she was uncharacteristically silent. In her hands, she clutched a piece of information that could change everything, a secret about Derek Lawson, a man whose life had just taken a miraculous turn. Derek, a quiet mechanic with a troubled past, had been at death's door just weeks ago, his body ravaged by illness. But against all odds, he'd made a full recovery, a miracle that had the town buzzing. Doctors called it inexplicable, Derek called it a second chance. But Shanice knew the truth, or at least, part of it. She'd overheard a conversation that suggested Derek's recovery wasn't a miracle at all, but the result of something far more sinister. A deal, perhaps, or an experiment gone wrong. Whatever it was tied to Leslie Kane and the shadowy forces circling Fairmont Crest. Shanice's instinct was to tell Ashley, Derek's fiancée, who remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her. Ashley, with her wide-eyed optimism and unshakable faith in Derek, deserved to know the truth. But Shanice hesitated. Speaking out could put her in danger, and for once, she wasn't sure she was ready to face the... Vanessa, reeling from Nicole's revelation, stood at a crossroads, torn between fear and the need for answers. Jan and Mona, armed with Leslie's secrets, were determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Leslie, perched in her ivory tower, braced herself for a battle she couldn't afford to lose. And Shanice, caught between loyalty and fear, held the key to a truth that could either save or destroy them all. The gates of Fairmont Crest, once a symbol of safety, now seemed to guard a labyrinth of lies. The events of this single night would ripple through the town, exposing betrayals, unearthing buried truths, and testing the bonds of friendship and love. Who would emerge unscathed? And who would fall to the shadows that lurked beyond the gates? For those hungry for the full story, the answers lie in the video that captures every heart-pounding moment. Watch as Fairmont Crest's secrets unravel, and brace yourself for a tale of tragedy, triumph, and the unrelenting pursuit of truth. Our TV channel Soap News and Spoilers is the place for those who want to know how the Salem story goes, as well as great Beyond the Gates updates and news, so subscribe to our channel to get what you want. Bye-bye.